Sandra Harris, a 60-year-old, self-made and recently retired businesswoman, had dedicated decades of her life to building a successful company. Her commitment to her career came at the expense of her personal life. Her marriage ended in divorce, and she grew increasingly lonely in retirement. Despite financial stability, Sandra felt emotionally isolated and quietly yearned for companionship, though she remained cautious and skeptical, especially of younger men. This changed when she met Jamal Preston, a 29-year-old man who appeared unexpectedly at a community event. With his polished charm, attentiveness, and warm demeanor, Jamal stood out. Despite their 31-year age difference and Sandra's initial reluctance, he slowly disarmed her with thoughtful conversation and small, meaningful gestures. Over time, Sandra, who hadn't believed she'd find love again, began to fall for him, seeing in Jamal a chance at the emotional connection and shared life she had long been missing. Jamal Preston is not who he appears to be. While he presents himself as a charming, attentive, and sincere young man, in reality, he is a serial con artist and predator with a deeply manipulative nature. Jamal has spent the past 3 years perfecting a sinister scheme, targeting wealthy, older, often isolated women, building trust through emotional manipulation, and then marrying them under false identities. Each of these relationships has ended in tragedy. The women either died under suspicious but seemingly natural circumstances, or were left financially ruined. He uses aliases and fabricated backstories to evade detection and ensure that no one can trace his previous actions. Jamal's charm is highly calculated. He customizes his personality to reflect each target's desires, portray himself as humble, supportive, and emotionally available. In truth, he sees these women only as a means to an end, financial gain through inheritance and life insurance payouts. Sandra is his fifth target, unknowingly stepping into a carefully rehearsed trap. Would you like me to continue with bullet point 3 in detail? After their initial meeting, Jamal strategically deepens his relationship with Sandra, using emotional intelligence and psychological manipulation. He begins to appear at the same community events Sandra attends, making their encounter seem coincidental when, in fact, they are carefully orchestrated. Over time, he learns about her interests, values, and emotional vulnerabilities, especially her longing for meaningful companionship after years of isolation. Jamal presents himself as a thoughtful and respectful listener, engaging Sandra in long, late-night conversations where she gradually opens up about her past, her sacrifices, and her regrets. His responses are always perfectly timed, offering sympathy, admiration, and warmth, making Sandra feel deeply understood for the first time in years. Beyond words, Jamal uses small, calculated gestures, bringing her favorite tea, gifting books tailored to her tastes, and making her feel intellectually and emotionally appreciated. He never comes on too strong, instead fostering an illusion of safety and connection. These tactics slowly disarm Sandra's skepticism, and the walls she had built over years of caution and heartbreak begin to fall. To Sandra, this feels like genuine love forming. To Jamal, it's a carefully executed strategy designed to secure her emotional dependency and pave the way to her wealth. Once Jamal has fully earned Sandra's emotional trust, he begins to subtly shift the focus toward her finances, always under the pretense of care and future planning. Aware that Sandra is financially savvy and not easily fooled, Jamal avoids overt or rushed attempts to access her wealth. Instead, he takes a slow, calculated approach, first offering seemingly innocent financial advice, suggesting she simplify her estate or consolidate assets for peace of mind in retirement. He frames these suggestions as thoughtful, loving gestures to help her enjoy life without stress. As the relationship grows more serious, Jamal starts talking about their future together, making plans as a couple, discussing shared goals, and introducing the idea of combining their lives in a practical, long-term way. These conversations lead naturally into topics like estate planning, life insurance, and financial security, all framed as symbols of commitment. He then begins gently planning the idea of becoming her beneficiary, presenting it as a logical next step in their relationship. Sandra, believing she has finally found someone who truly loves her and who has no family of his own, gradually agrees. She starts making legal and financial changes, unaware that every step is part of Jamal's con. By the time his name is added to her estate documents and life insurance policies, Jamal has quietly positioned himself to inherit her entire fortune, all while maintaining the illusion of a devoted partner. In private moments, he tells her that she doesn't need to handle everything alone anymore. He implies that she's always been strong enough to take care of herself, but she deserves to let go of that burden and rely on him. At first, Sandra resists, but Jamal is always there to reassure her that true love means leaning on each other. His words are like a soothing balm, quieting the voice inside her head that tells her be careful to maintain her independence. Jamal has made it clear if she doesn't trust him, they won't have a future. This constant pressure wears down her defenses. And yet, when Sandra does try to stand up for herself, Jamal plays the victim. If she tries to spend time with her daughter or even takes a weekend trip with friends, Jamal makes her feel guilty for leaving him behind. He throws tantrums, playing the part of the abandoned lover, complaining that he feels lonely and unimportant when she's not around. His mood swings like a roller coaster, and Sandra finds herself walking on eggshells, constantly trying to balance her life with his ever-growing demands. In these moments of emotional turbulence, Sandra questions whether she's overreacting after all. Jamal has been nothing but loving, hasn't he? It's during these emotional lows that Jamal's dark side truly emerges. He begins to accuse Sandra of things she's never done, jealousy creeping in where none existed before. He starts scrutinizing every conversation she has with men, making her feel like she's betraying him by even acknowledging the presence of another man in her life. When she tries to reassure him, Jamal turns cold, giving her the silent treatment for days at a time, using her guilt to get exactly what he wants. Sandra is left wondering what she did wrong, unsure what is real and what is part of his manipulation. As the relationship progresses, Jamal starts pushing the boundaries further. He begins to ask Sandra for small favors, things that seem harmless at first alone here, a payment for something he claims he can't afford. Sandra, ever the giver, agrees, believing his excuses. But each request, no matter how small, chips away at her financial independence. He carefully gauges her reactions, learning exactly how far he can push her before she begins to question his sincerity. But by the time Sandra begins to realize that something isn't right, Jamal has already wrapped her so tightly in his web that it's almost impossible to untangle herself. One night, during a particularly heated argument, Jamal makes a shocking statement. He accuses Sandra of not trusting him enough to share her finances with him. His voice shakes with anger, and the weight of his words lands like a punch. Sandra is left stunned, unable to fully process what he's asking. He has made it clear that if she truly loved him, she would share everything with him, her savings, her investments, her future. At first, she hesitates, unsure of what he's asking, but Jamal twists it, so it seems like an act of love, a symbol of commitment and trust. What are we if we're not partners in everything? He asks her with a charming, disarming smile. In a vulnerable moment, Sandra finally agrees to combine their finances. She's convinced that this is the next step in their relationship, believing that love means sacrifice and complete trust. But what she doesn't know is that Jamal is not just asking for access to her bank accounts. He's systematically placing his hands on the strings of her financial life, ensuring that he's positioned himself for the moment when he can take everything. As the pressure mounts, Sandra starts feeling more and more like she's losing herself, unable to breathe without Jamal's presence looming over her. Her friends and family notice her growing unhappiness, but she brushes off the concerns, too blinded by her feelings for Jamal to see the truth. Her sense of self is slipping away, and the woman she once was, the independent, strong, and self-sufficient woman, becomes a distant memory, lost in the overpowering grip of Jamal's emotional and financial control. It's only when a close friend confronts Sandra, warning her that Jamal's behavior has all the hallmarks of manipulation and control, that Sandra begins to question everything. But by now, the damage has been done. Jamal has so thoroughly wrapped himself around her heart, her mind, and her bank accounts that Sandra is torn between love and fear, unsure of how to break free. She is now caught in a storm of conflicting emotions, not knowing if she can trust her own judgment. The turning point comes when Sandra begins to feel suffocated and trapped, unsure of how much longer she can endure Jamal's increasingly manipulative and controlling behavior. Despite the growing tension, Jamal knows exactly what buttons to push to keep her in his grip. His charm still lingers, especially during moments when he senses her pulling away. He turns on the sweet talk and uses the perfect words to make her feel like she's the one in the wrong, that she's overreacting, that she's the one causing the problems in their relationship. Sandra, full of doubts and confusion, finds herself questioning her own sanity. The stress of the situation begins to affect Sandra in ways she never imagined. Her work performance suffers. Her health begins to decline, and she feels like she's losing a sense of who she really is. Jamal's presence in her life has become all-consuming, and it's like he's planted seeds of self-doubt in every corner of her mind. Sandra feels constantly anxious, walking on eggshells around him, afraid to speak her mind or make decisions without his approval. Even simple tasks, like choosing what to wear or what to eat, become stressful because Jamal has an opinion on everything, and no matter what she does, he seems to think she could do better or be better if she just listened to him more. At one point, after a heated argument, Jamal makes a shocking move. He begins playing the role of the victim in front of Sandra's friends. He manipulates their perceptions by painting Sandra as a cold, distant one, the woman who just doesn't understand how much he's trying. His innocent, wounded persona makes Sandra appear cruel in their eyes. His ability to turn others against her is a tactic he's perfected, and as her friends start questioning her relationship, Sandra begins to feel isolated and alone. She is torn between wanting to defend herself and not wanting to make Jamal more upset, worried about how he will react if she speaks up. This period of emotional turmoil grows worse when Jamal takes things a step further. He starts monitoring Sandra's social media, making subtle comment about the posts she shares, the people she interacts with, and even the way she dresses for social occasions. Every time Sandra interacts with a man, even in a purely professional capacity, Jamal makes a snide remark, accusing her of trying to get attention. The jealousy that once seemed like just a minor flaw becomes a force that dominates her every move. He demands to know who she's talking to, where she's been, and why she didn't tell him everything, no matter how trivial it might be. One night, after Sandra attends a work event without him, Jamal erupts in a fit of rage. He accuses her of lying about the event, of having a secret agenda, and throws accusations that she's been flirting with her colleagues. His anger is explosive, and Sandra is left trying to defend herself, but nothing she says will calm him down. He becomes so irrational, so volatile, that she starts second-guessing the very fabric of their relationship, wondering if he might be right. What if she is trying to get attention? What if she's been ignoring his needs all along? The emotional toll takes a heavy toll on Sandra's mental and physical health. She begins to lose sleep, has trouble eating, and feels a constant sense of impending dread whenever she sees Jamal's name on her phone. The worst part is that, even when he's being cruel, Jamal has a way of wrapping his words in sweetness. He apologizes after each outburst, promising that he will never do it again, that he's just afraid of losing her. His apologies feel sincere, and Sandra starts questioning if she's the one with the problem. Maybe she's just too sensitive. She can't help but wonder if her friends, her family, even her therapist are all wrong about him. Maybe Jamal's manipulation is so subtle that she can't see it clearly for herself. However, one fateful night, Jamal crosses a line that Sandra can't ignore. After another argument about her friends who Jamal has relentlessly criticized, he makes a deeply hurtful comment, questioning Sandra's loyalty to him. He accuses her of being too close to one of her longtime friends, someone she's known for years, and implies that she's been secretly cheating with him. It's a blow so devastating that Sandra feels her heart shatter. It's not the first time Jamal has made accusations, but this one feels different. It hits a raw nerve. Sandra, desperate for a moment of clarity, stands her ground for the first time in months. She refuses to accept his accusation. Jamal's reaction is swift and brutal. He storms out, leaving Sandra in a whirlwind of confusion, self-doubt, and fear. In the aftermath of this incident, Sandra can no longer deny the toxic nature of their relationship. The emotional abuse has become too much to bear, and for the first time in a long while, Sandra sees Jamal for who he truly is, a manipulative, controlling partner who will stop at nothing to break her down and keep her dependent on him. However, the realization is crushing. Sandra is trapped in an emotional labyrinth, unable to find a way out because Jamal has manipulated her into believing that she's incapable of being independent, that she needs him, and that without him, she's nothing. But the final straw comes when Jamal asks Sandra to cut off one of her closest friends, the one person who's been a consistent voice of reason. This friend has warned Sandra about Jamal's behavior, but she has always brushed it off, believing that her friend just didn't understand her relationship. When Jamal demands that she cut ties with this person, or else their relationship will end, Sandra realizes that she's been so consumed by Jamal's manipulation that she has allowed him to control every aspect of her life. Her freedom, her sense of self has been taken from her, piece by piece, until now it feels like she has no choice but to follow Jamal's demands. But as she looks at herself in the mirror, she can no longer ignore the fact that she has lost herself in this relationship. Sandra finally makes a decision. She's done with the mind games, done with being controlled. It's time to take back control of her life, even if it means losing the man who's claimed so much of her heart. The emotional battle between staying in a relationship and breaking free has reached its peak, and Sandra's breaking point has arrived. The confrontation between Sandra and Jamal finally comes to a head one night, when Sandra, overwhelmed by the emotional manipulation she's endured for months, decides she can no longer stay silent. She's had enough. For the first time in ages, she finds the strength to speak her mind, to express the anger, the hurt, and the disappointment that has been building up inside her. It's not just a small argument, it's a full-blown confrontation, a battle for her autonomy and sanity. Sandra, shaking with nerves but determined, lays everything on the table. She tells Jamal that she can no longer tolerate his behavior, that she's been isolated and controlled, that his constant manipulation has left her feeling like a shadow of herself. Every word feels like a catharsis, but as she speaks, Jamal's reaction is not what she expects. Instead of guilt and remorse Sandra hopes to see, Jamal's face contorts into a cold, mocking expression. He denies everything. He twists the narrative, accusing Sandra of being the toxic one, of overreacting and creating problems out of nothing. He claims that her accusations are nothing but lies, that she's the one who has been neglecting him, that she's been selfish, distant, and emotionally unavailable. He accuses her of having an affair with one of her co-workers, saying she's been caught up in her own world and ignoring the sacrifices he's made for her. Jamal's voice rises with each passing second, his words laced with venom. And for a moment, Sandra begins to doubt herself again. Maybe she's overreacting. Maybe she is the one who's been unreasonable. Jamal, with his undeniable charm, shifts the blame onto her so smoothly that she feels guilty for even questioning him. It's classic gaslighting, and it's working. But Sandra, desperate to get her feelings across, digs her heels in. She tells him that she won't back down this time, that she can't keep living in fear of his temper and manipulation. Jamal, visibly enraged, snaps. He steps closer to her, his face inches from hers, and his words come out in a venomous whisper. "You think you're so much better than me? You think you can just walk away?" He spits the words at her like poison. The force of his anger sends a chill down her spine, but Sandra stands firm, refusing to let his intimidation tactics break her. Then Jamal does something that shakes Sandra to her core. He begins to cry. It's not the heartfelt tears of a man who's genuinely sorry, but tears of manipulation, crafted to make Sandra feel like the cruel one. "How could you do this to me?" he wails, his voice breaking as he dramatically drops to his knees, begging her not to leave. The sight of him on the floor, broken and vulnerable, makes Sandra's heart twist. It's the same tactic he's used countless times before, turning the tables, making Sandra feel like the villain in her own life. In that moment, the emotional weight of the situation nearly crushes Sandra. She feels like she's suffocating, trapped in a cycle of guilt and confusion. He calls her heartless, manipulative, a woman who will never find someone as good as him. His words, dripping with false remorse, make her feel like she owes him another chance, that maybe she's overreacted. She wonders if maybe, just maybe, she's the one who's wrong. But then something inside her snaps. She remembers the sleepless nights, the broken promises, the constant manipulation, and the way he has made her question her own worth. Sandra suddenly realizes that she has been drowning in this relationship, and that every time she tried to swim toward the surface, Jamal was there, pulling her back under. She is suffocating under his control, and it's suffocating every part of her that ever believed in love, in herself. For a brief second, Sandra sees through his act. She knows this is another attempt to trap her, to make her feel like she can't leave. Her heart races, but now there's clarity. She refuses to fall for it again. With trembling hands, she reaches for her phone, standing up to call a friend for support. Jamal's eyes flash with fury as he sees what she's doing. His fury turns to desperation. He grabs her arm, yanking her back, his grip tightening around her wrist. "You're not going anywhere, Sandra." The words feel like a physical blow. Sandra recoils, her body trembling from the mix of fear and anger. Her pulse races as she looks him dead in the eye, finally finding the courage to say the words that have been trapped inside her for so long. "I'm done, Jamal." For a moment, there's a stunned silence. Jamal stares at her, as though the words she just spoke are foreign, like he never truly thought she would leave. Then, without warning, his anger erupts again. He hurls accusations at her, calling her selfish, ungrateful, unworthy. He tells her that she'll never find someone who will love her like he does. His words are cruel, cutting, and designed to break her. But Sandra has already made her decision. She feels a sudden sense of empowerment, something she hasn't felt in a long time. She grabs her bag, tears streaming down her face, and walks out the door, leaving Jamal standing there in a mixture of fury and disbelief. As she steps into the night, the weight of the decision crashes down on her. She's left with a whirlwind of emotions, relief, anger, sadness, but most of all, she feels something she hasn't felt in ages: freedom. She is finally free from the toxic hold that Jamal has had on her life for so long. Sandra's decision to leave Jamal is not as clean-cut as she'd hoped. The aftermath of her escape is a constant battle of emotions, like a storm brewing in her chest. For the first few days, she's in a whirlwind of grief and relief, unsure what to feel or how to process the sudden change. Her mind is a tangled mess of doubt, guilt, and frustration as she tries to convince herself that she did the right thing. Still, the echoes of Jamal's voice, his manipulative charm, and the memories of their good times keep pulling her back, making her question whether she made a mistake. The mental toll is exhausting. Jamal, as she soon learns, isn't going to let her go easily. He begins calling her constantly, his voice dripping with sweetness and desperation as he pleads for her to come back. But it's not the desperation of a man who truly loves her. No, this is the desperation of someone who refuses to lose control over her. He tells her he's changed, that he's learned his lesson, and that all the pain he caused was just a misunderstanding. His words seem so sincere, so full of false hope, it's almost impossible for Sandra not to feel a twinge of doubt. He shows up at her apartment, standing outside her door in the pouring rain, a bouquet of flowers in hand, begging for a chance to prove that he could be the man she needs. The image of him standing there, drenched to the bone, his expression a mix of sadness and regret, tugs at something deep inside her. He's the same man who humiliated her, lied to her, and emotionally destroyed her. But the sight of him, the soft pleading in his voice, has a paralyzing effect. She feels the old feelings creeping in, the ones that made her love him in the first place. When Sandra doesn't answer the door, Jamal gets more desperate. He calls again and again, leaving voicemail after voicemail, each one growing more intense. His voice becomes more frantic, the calm demeanor slipping as he accuses her of being heartless, of abandoning him when he needed her most. He says that if she truly loved him, she wouldn't leave him like this. He threatens to hurt himself if she doesn't come back, invoking her sympathy with a final, devastating plea. "You're the only one who ever really cared about me. Don't let me fall apart." Sandra is paralyzed by guilt, the fear of what might happen to him if she stays firm, the fear that she might be condemning him to self-destruction, haunts her every moment. She feels torn between the desire to keep her distance and the lingering emotional attachment that he's so adept at exploiting. She knows deep down that she can't go back to the toxic environment he created, but the thought of him spiraling into despair overwhelms her. The emotional manipulation escalates. Jamal begins to spread rumors about her to their mutual friends, painting her as a cold-hearted woman who left him when he was at his lowest. He even goes so far as to embarrass her at her workplace, showing up unannounced during her lunch break, handing out copies of a letter he wrote, detailing how she's betrayed him. He accuses her of ruining his reputation, and the guilt starts to suffocate her, knowing that their shared past can now impact her relationships and career. In a desperate bid to end the drama and regain control over her life, Sandra makes the painful decision to change her phone number and cut ties with mutual friends. She blocks him on every platform, trying to erase him from her life once and for all. But Jamal isn't done. One night, she receives an anonymous package at her door. Inside, there's a picture of the two of them, a note that reads, "Remember how happy we were? Don't you miss me?" It feels like an invasion of her privacy, a subtle, menacing reminder that he's still watching her every move. Sandra's hands shake as she throws the photo in the trash, but it's like he's still lurking in the corners of her mind, refusing to let her go. The psychological toll of all this is immense. Sandra becomes paranoid and anxious, afraid to leave her apartment, constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering if Jamal will pop up out of nowhere. The flashbacks to his manipulative words and abusive actions play on repeat in her mind, and she begins to question everything she thought she knew about herself. Was she really that naive? Was she really that weak? But as time goes on, Sandra starts to gain her strength back. She seeks therapy, slowly working through the deep emotional scars left by the relationship. She starts to rebuild her self-esteem, making new friends who help her rediscover her independence and sense of self-worth. Yet, despite her progress, the haunting thoughts of Jamal's presence still linger, occasionally creeping in during the quiet moments of night, threatening to unravel everything she's worked for. There's one final confrontation that puts an end to the cycle. It happens on a night when Sandra is feeling more confident in her recovery, and she's just begun to feel like herself again. Jamal calls one last time, demanding to meet in person. This time, Sandra is prepared. She agrees to meet him at a neutral location, a coffee shop, with a crowd of people around. When he sees her, his eyes flash with anger and hurt, but he quickly masks it with a calm, almost rehearsed smile. He says he just wants to talk, to get closure. Sandra, however, is done with the emotional roller coaster. With a firm voice, she tells him that the closure he seeks is not hers to give. The relationship is over, and it's time for him to move on. She looks him square in the eyes, saying, "I deserve better, and so do you. I won't let you drag me back into this toxic web." Jamal's face falls, a mixture of shock, rage, and deep betrayal in his expression. He doesn't understand. He tries to reach for her hand, his voice trembling. But Sandra stands her ground, and for the first time, she feels a sense of liberation. The emotional weight that held her captive for so long begins to lift, and the fear that had kept her silent for so many months starts to dissipate. She walks away, leaving Jamal behind, and with it, all the toxic remnants of their relationship. Sandra's attempt to heal after leaving Jamal is far from smooth. The weight of her past decision, the emotional scars, and the constant pull of his presence in her life make every step forward feel like 2 steps back. At first, she focuses on finding comfort in her friends and family, leaning on the people who love her. But even their support doesn't seem enough. The silence is suffocating, and worse, the loneliness she's tried so hard to avoid begins to close in on her. Her nights are the hardest. In the quiet hours before sleep, memories of Jamal flood back his soft touch, his comforting words, even his rage-filled outbursts. The times when he wounded her emotionally, twisting her thoughts, making her feel small and insignificant, keep her up, staring at the ceiling, heart racing. The hurt doesn't just fade with time. It festers like an open wound, each memory a raw, unhealed part of her. It's during one of these sleepless nights that Sandra receives a random message on social media, one that stirs up an old, familiar dread in her gut. It's a comment on an old photo of them together, posted on a public page she once shared with Jamal. The comment reads, "I hope you know you destroyed his life. He's not the same after you left." Sandra's hands shake as she reads the message, her breath catching in her throat. She immediately goes to check her phone's notifications, her anxiety spiraling. As she does, she realizes this isn't just a comment from a random stranger. It's from one of Jamal's closest friends. Her heart drops as the realization hits. Jamal is using his network to continue to haunt her, even after everything they've been through. The emotional manipulation isn't over, not by a long shot. Sandra ignores the comment, but the attacks don't stop. They escalate. Jamal starts posting cryptic statuses about how he's been broken beyond repair, each one alluding to Sandra and their past. The posts are poisoned with guilt, designed to make Sandra feel like a villain. Some people leave, and they think they can erase what they did. But what about the damage they leave behind? One post reads, "And Sandra knows it's meant for her." His words are designed to twist her empathy, to make her feel like she's the one who destroyed him. The tension between them grows. Sandra can't escape the quiet whispers from mutual friends, who, with their innocent comments, unknowingly plant seeds of doubt in her mind. Jamal isn't himself anymore. "You really broke his heart, didn't you?" they say, their words like daggers in her already fragile state. Even people she trusts are being manipulated by Jamal's narrative, and Sandra feels more and more isolated in a world she once thought was hers. But it doesn't stop there. One day, Sandra gets an anonymous phone call. At work, her heart skips a beat when she picks up. It's a recording of Jamal's voice, slurred and filled with despair. "You left me, Sandra. I don't know how to go on without you. You've ruined me. I hope you realize that." The recording ends abruptly, leaving her with a deep sense of dread. She immediately wonders if Jamal is threatening to harm himself again, something she's feared for so long. Her mind races. Is he truly in danger? The old guilt claws at her, questioning if she's the one to blame. She knows the toxic cycle of guilt and manipulation he's put her through, but the fear of what he might do if she does respond makes her hesitate. Sandra's rational mind tells her that she can go back to that life, but the emotional weight of his words almost sends her spiraling. In an attempt to regain control, she contacts his close family members, hoping to verify if Jamal's okay. His mother answers, sounding shocked as she explains that Jamal hasn't spoken to her in days. Her voice quivers with concern. "He's been drinking, Sandra. I don't know what he's going to do. Please, you need to talk to him." The mention of Jamal's drinking is like a punch to Sandra's gut, and she wonders if this is another manipulative ploy to bring her back. The drama unfolds when Sandra finally decides to take the bold step of blocking Jamal on everything social media, phone, email. Cutting off all access to her life is her final attempt to regain control. For a moment, the relief feels almost tangible, but it doesn't last. The next day, she receives another message this time. It's a letter, handwritten and postmarked from his address. Sandra's heart races as she opens it. The letter is filled with emotional pleas, each sentence written with the force of a man at the edge of despair. "You don't understand. You never did. I loved you and you tore me apart. You'll regret this for the rest of your life." The letter ends with a chilling line. "You can't escape me. I'll always find a way back to you." The message leaves Sandra shaken to her core. Is this a promise? Or is Jamal simply playing his last card to get her back? His words are a direct echo of everything she feared his power to manipulate her, to pull her back into the darkness. Her anxiety is at an all-time high, but this time she refuses to be weak. She decides to take further action. Sandra files a restraining order against him, knowing that it's the only way to break free. The paperwork is humiliating, but necessary. She faces a brutal moment in court when Jamal's attorney tries to twist her past actions, painting her as the one who mistreated him. The judge sees through it, but Sandra feels exposed, vulnerable, and terrified of Jamal's next move. Finally, after months of constant harassment, Sandra begins to regain a sense of control. She attends therapy, works on rebuilding her trust in herself, and focuses on rediscovering her passions. Yet, even after the legal protections, Jamal's shadow still lingers over her. He remains a haunting presence in her mind, like an itch she can't scratch away. The emotional scars may fade with time, but the trauma of being trapped in such a manipulative relationship will stay with her forever. But through all the pain, Sandra emerges stronger. She learns to trust her instincts again, and slowly, but surely, she rebuilds her life this time, without Jamal. The healing process is long, but for the first time, she feels like she can finally breathe without the constant pressure of his toxic presence suffocating her. After successfully gaining Sandra's trust and securing his place in her finances, Jamal proposed marriage, catching her by surprise. though hesitant due to the age gap in her past. Sandra accepted after Jamal reassured her he wanted only companionship, not children or traditional family. The wedding was small and intimate, exactly as Jamal planned to avoid attention or questions. After moving in with Sandra, Jamal intensified his role as a devoted husband, cooking, caring for her, and making her feel deeply cherished. Behind the scenes, however, he began tampering with her heart medication, replacing it with harmless substances. His goal was to slowly weaken her health, making her eventual death seem natural and tied to her existing heart condition. All of his actions were part of a cold, calculated plan to kill her without raising suspicion. Would you like a breakdown of the earlier bullet points too? Just 2 days after the wedding, Jamal's plan reached its final stage. During a quiet dinner at home, Sandra suddenly experienced severe chest pain and difficulty breathing as a result of her heart medication being secretly swapped by Jamal. Jamal pretended to panic, rushing to her side and calling emergency services, fully playing the part of a loving, desperate husband. As paramedics arrived and took Sandra to the hospital, Jamal maintained his act, staying by her side and showing outward grief. Sandra died en route to the hospital, and her death appeared consistent with her known heart condition, raising no immediate suspicion. Jamal's emotional performance fooled everyone, positioning him to quickly inherit her wealth and move on just as he had with his previous victims. Would you like help organizing all the bullet point summaries into one clean document? Just 2 days after their wedding, Jamal put the final part of his plan into action. During a quiet dinner at home, Sandra suddenly experienced severe chest pain, a result of Jamal secretly replacing her heart medication with ineffective pills. Jamal pretended to panic, called emergency services, and played the role of a concerned, loving husband. As paramedics arrived and rushed Sandra to the hospital, Jamal stayed by her side, maintaining his emotional performance. Sandra died en route to the hospital, her death appearing to be a natural result of her known heart condition. Jamal appeared devastated to medical staff, but in reality, he was calm and satisfied, believing his plan had succeeded once again. Would you like me to summarize the next bullet point as well? Sandra Harris, Sandra's daughter, is a sharp and instinctive police officer who had always felt protective of her mother. When Sandra introduced Jamal, Sandra was immediately suspicious of the much younger man's intentions, sensing something off about his polished charm and vague background. Though Jamal appeared caring and attentive, Sandra noticed manipulative behavior. He was always present, subtly controlling, and deflected any personal questions. Wanting to respect her mother's choices, Sandra kept her concerns to herself but continued to observe closely. After Sandra's sudden death, Sandra's suspicions intensified. She couldn't reconcile her mother's rapid decline with her relatively stable health. The narrative implies that Sandra will begin investigating Jamal, potentially uncovering his hidden past and exposing his crimes. Would you like the final bullet point summarized as well? Jamal's belief in his success. Following Sandra's sudden death, Jamal is confident that his plan has worked perfectly again. Like with his previous 4 victims, he gained her trust through emotional manipulation, married her quickly, tampered with her health under the guise of love and care, ensured she died under seemingly natural circumstances, positioned himself to inherit her entire estate. Jamal sees himself as untouchable, having successfully evaded detection for years by using different identities and erasing his past. Sandra Harris as the unexpected obstacle. This time, however, Jamal has underestimated one crucial factor. Sandra's daughter, Sandra, a trained police officer with keen instincts. Unlike his previous victims, who had no close family, Sandra had someone watching, someone trained to spot deception. Sandra had always been uneasy about Jamal, and now, faced with her mother's unexplained and rapid death, her suspicions are no longer silent. Foreshadowing of justice. The story strongly implies that Sandra will begin investigating, possibly uncovering, Jamal's real identity, his connection to other mysterious deaths, the tampering of Sandra's medication. This sets up a dramatic shift in the narrative, from Jamal being a cold, calculating predator who gets away with everything, to finally being exposed and pursued. The ending doesn't resolve the investigation, but leaves the audience with a sense that Sandra's story isn't over, and Jamal's downfall may be imminent. Not because of law enforcement alone, but because he chose the wrong victim this time. One with a daughter who is both emotionally invested and professionally capable of uncovering the truth. Would you like a continuation of this story imagined beyond the video, for example? What might happen in Kira's investigation?